What's up guys, Matt Laidlaw here, coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, LA area's oldest, largest, and finest Harley-Davidson dealership. So today I will be doing a review and a test ride on the really popular Softail Slim. Alright, let me introduce you guys to the Harley-Davidson Softail Slim. So the Slim was first introduced to the Harley-Davidson lineup in the 2012 model year. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a mid-model year launch. So we first saw it about February in the 2012 calendar year. So we've seen this model now for about 6 model years in a row. The Softail Slim really gets its inspiration and the styling from the post-World War II era. When bobbers were out, and that was, back before it was trendy and popular like it is today. That's just kind of how the bikes were. A lot of guys were getting motorcycles that were military bikes, and the only way to make them faster was to chop the fenders off and take any unnecessary equipment off them, so as to reduce the weight and make the bike quicker. So yeah, the Softail Slim definitely plays into that styling. You see a very unique handlebar here. They call it the Hollywood handlebar. This is a key trait to this bike that lends one more characteristic about it that makes it look like this era of motorcycle. Hollywood bar comes from back in the day if you had this cross brace on the handlebars and you put like bags on it to carry equipment, gloves, glasses. Some guys put lights up there. If you did that, people would say that you've gone Hollywood, quote. And so, that's where it gets its name. So you got the nacelle on here. That's a real classic look. It's similar to what you see like on the Fat Boy. You got the big 7-inch headlamp there. All the finishes on here, like on the engine covers, the forks, it's all polished as opposed to chrome. One more thing, kind of giving it that raw, unrefined look to it, kind of that raw metal look. Brakes on the bike are real good. It's similar to the description I gave in some of my recent videos on the Deluxe and on the Heritage. You got a 4-piston front caliper brake. It's a single disc brake, and Harley-Davidson did upgrade those brakes quite a bit. I want to say the 2015 model year, they really reduced the brake lever effort in this thing. So yeah, that front brake is real heavy duty. It stops the bike real well. And yeah, as you can see here, as I'm walking around the bike, you got these real clean, minimalist chopped fenders. You can see a lot of the rear wheel on this thing. You got just 2 turn signals in the rear as opposed to a big tail light. So your turn signals and your brake lights are all integrated into just those 2 bullet turn signals. This is a stitched tuck and roll seat is what they call it. Real cool classic look. With this chassis and suspension and the seat that's on here, the Softail Slim accomplishes one of the lowest seat heights in the Harley-Davidson lineup. So this bike is great if you're a shorter rider. Here's a shot of the rear brakes and the swing arm. Something that, and I'm repeating myself from some of my other videos if you guys watch my other videos, but this is on the Softail frame, and just by knowing that, that's going to tell you a lot about how the bike's going to handle and react and everything. So what Harley-Davidson does and has accomplished with Softail, which by the way is a trademarked frame trademarked term that Harley-Davidson trademarked years ago. But what they do is they give you the look of a hardtail. Visibly in the rear, you see no shocks back here. That's to make it look like the hardtails of old, like it has absolutely no suspension back there, just a straight, swing arm back there. But what we know is what makes it a Softail is you've got these coilover shocks. 2 coilover shocks that are horizontally mounted, horizontally up underneath the frame, between the 2 bottom tubes of the frame underneath there. So you have a cushioned ride with the hardtail look, and that's kind of the main benefit, cosmetic benefit from getting a Softail chassis bike. The paint on this is the iron red denim. I really like this color. It's a brand new color with the 2017 model year. I think it looks like a rusted red or like a dried blood red. It looks really nice, especially on this bike. I think it really goes well with the overall look and the theme of this motorcycle. Almost like, you know, a bike that you opened up like a barn and found this bike like in a barn somewhere. It's just a really cool, raw, classic looking motorcycle. So a lot of blacked out parts on this bike. The center console, they call it a cat's eye center console. I'll show a closer shot of that in a minute here. But you know, the bars are all blacked out. The oil tank on there, the kind of the iconic oil tank right underneath the seat there is all blacked out. The struts there supporting the rear fender are just the raw metal back there. You don't have covers on them. One more thing, just to kind of give this thing your minimalist, just raw engineering look to it. Heat fins on the engine, on the cylinders are black. You've got Harley-Davidson's high output 103 cubic inch engine on here. So it's the B motor, the twin cam air cooled 103B motor. Blacked out horn cover. Here's your real retro speedometer there. They call it the cat's eye speedometer. Here's your keys. You can get this bike with or without security. This bike does not have the security on it, so you just get the 2 barrel keys. The security is one more layer of protection, anti-theft. Basically, if I were to unlock the bike as I'm showing here, I could start this bike up without the key and ride away without the key. This is accessory mode, gives you access to your dash there. You're probably never going to use that if you buy this bike. And then that's ignition position there. So run, this is your kill switch there. Cool etched Harley-Davidson in the riser there. Real classic look. So I'm going to start this thing up so you guys can hear how it sounds. Alright, so there's the engine. This bike does have the counterbalanced engine. I didn't mention that. So yeah, it's as opposed to a rubber mounted engine, so there's very little vibration when the engine's running. So this is your digital readout here. You got a gear and RPM digital readout. You also have a trip A, a trip B, approximately how many miles you have before you run out of gas. Fuel indicator on the left. On the right hand is your cap. You got a 5-gallon fuel tank on here. All the fuel goes in on the right. In California, the octane recommended rating is 91 octane. Floorboards are pretty unique. They're definitely era specific. It's a half moon floorboard, as they call it. Here's your fork lock here. Throw the key in. Sorry about the shot. Throw the key in, move the notch up to 12 o'clock, locks it, so bars are locked to the left. So you're going to want to lock your fork and the ignition when you leave the bike, so 2 separate places. Once those two items are unlocked, the key stays in your pocket and you ride the bike without the key and the ignition. The brake pedal is, again, a real retro nostalgic looking brake pedal as well. Kind of really goes along with the floorboards, that half moon style floorboard. In the comments, I consistently get a lot of questions about statistics and pricing and power and things like that. So I like to go to Harley-Davidson.com to check that stuff out. So the bike starts at $15,099. That's for just a plain Vivid Black one. The Vivid Black in every bike is the least expensive, guys. And then when you get a color other than black, it bumps it up $300 to $500 depending on what model it is. So here's just kind of some artistic shots that are on Harley-Davidson.com that I thought were kind of nice, that highlighted the bike real well. They coincidentally enough are using the exact same color that I used in the video as well. So a couple things they touch on here is the styling, things I already kind of talked about. How here's your half moon floorboards. It's that 50s era, 40s 50s era style of motorcycle. Real trimmed down. Just if it's not 100% necessary to be on the bike, it's not there. So here's some pricing. So I'm going to compare the 2017 Slim to the Slim S, and then I threw the lowrider in there as well. So price of just a base Vivid Black one is $15,099. For a Slim S, you're increasing that by almost $4,000, and then the lowrider is $14,749. So the Slim is in between both of these two models. The Slim S, guys, is the one with the 110 cubic inch engine, and it's got some blacked out cosmetics to it as well. So security option is $395 on this bike. It's standard on the other two bikes. ABS is $795, so you can get this bike with or without the ABS. It's standard on the Slim S. So as I already mentioned, the seat height on a Slim is one of the lowest seat heights Harley-Davidson has. So it's 23.8 inches, and that's laden weight. That's with, I think it's a 180-pound rider on it, what the seat height is going to shake out to be. So real popular among the shorter riders. If you're looking for a bike and you don't want a Sportster, a real small Sportster, but you have a short inseam, check that bike out. So the running order weight is 706 pounds on this. These bikes are all right around 700 pounds. So the Dynas and the Softails, as far as weight, is about the same. I will say the weight on a Softail is slung extremely low, so the bike it feels lighter than it really is. So you're going to get about 42 miles to the gallon, and the max engine torque is 102 foot-pounds of torque. That's at the crank, and that's accomplished at 3,000 RPM. The other two engines like to run a little bit higher RPM. The 110, I always point out to people, likes to be around 3,500 RPM. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what the variance is between the torque on that bike and the lowrider. One's counterbalance, one isn't. So I'm assuming it has something to do with that. So here are the three engines. This is the air-cooled high-output twin cam 103B, B standing for balanced. The Softails all have the balanced engine in them as opposed to the rubber-mounted engine. And then the Slim S has a 110 cubic inch engine, and the lowrider has the air-cooled high-output 103 that is a rubber-mounted engine. Compression ratio 9.6 to 1, and then you got 9.5 to 1 on the S and 9.6 to 1 on the lowrider. So relatively low compression ratio. The new Milwaukee 8, that runs, I want to say a 10.5 to 1 compression ratio on the new Milwaukee 8 engine. So I'm going to jump into the available color options in the 2017 model year. So you've got Vivid Black. This is the color that's available on pretty much every Harley-Davidson they offer. This is denim black. A lot of people refer to this color as flat black. This is the iron red denim, the one that I'm showing in this video. Probably my favorite of the 5 colors available this year. This is olive pearl gold, or olive gold pearl. So it is a sheen or shiny gloss finish in kind of like this, almost like a military drab color. Kind of cool for this bike. This is a two-tone black and charcoal denim color. I really like this color a lot. You do pay a premium for this. This is considered a two-tone, so you're going to pay like $1,000 more for that paint than you would the Vivid Black. So a request that I've been getting a lot lately is people want to see me on the bike, shots of me on the bike from a third-party perspective, and that's a valid request. People want to see the bike in motion, in action, and the GoPro footage is great, but it's nice to have various different perspectives. So I'd like to in the future, guys, have a crew with someone in a car following me, filming me as I'm riding down the road. But because I do all these videos 100% by myself, it's difficult to do that. This is not my full-time job by any means, but I have a lot of fun doing this, and I love the Harley-Davidson brand and the models and everything. So I enjoy my YouTube channel, and by the way, I enjoy everybody that watches these videos as well. Thank you for subscribing. If you subscribe, I really appreciate it. It keeps me motivated and keeps me bringing new content out. So thank you. But I'm 6'6" for those of you who haven't seen my previous videos, so I definitely don't fit this bike very well. That being said, I enjoy the bike at the height I am, and I was able to take this bike out this day and ride it, and I really enjoyed it. But I wouldn't buy this bike for my personal use with my size and weight. I'm 6'6", 215 pounds. So I prefer the touring chassis for my personal use, just because of my size, my weight, and my riding preferences. So let me start off, guys, by talking to you about the type of person, the type of buyer that I see, this bike suiting their needs. The Slim is definitely for the type of guy that wants something that just screams Harley-Davidson. That's just the real simplistic, old school lines of a Harley-Davidson, that has the unmistakable look of a Harley-Davidson, that kind of has that real simplistic engineering and geometry about it. A bike that can be very easily customized, just real big parts that aren't complex. This Softail Slim does all of that and delivers all of those qualities in a really big way. So if you're really looking for a bike that you just want to cruise and you want to make a few changes, make it look like your own, and you want something that has the real classic lines of an old school cruiser, then the Slim is definitely going to do that for you. It being a cruiser, it's definitely on the very far side of the spectrum as far as just a cruiser versus something that is more sporty, that can be ridden more aggressively. So with the Softail frame, most of the Softail models really have a limited lean angle on them. So this is a bike that you can't really get out on the twisty mountain roads and really lean over aggressively. I'm jumping up on the freeway now. This bike does really well on the freeway. There's some better, but a lot worse. The touring chassis bikes do better than the Softails up on the highway. The Softail Slim is also a lowered Softail. It's right in there with the Deluxe and the Fatboy Low and the Fatboy S. So not only is it the Softail suspension, which is slightly limited to begin with, but it's also the lowered Softail suspension. So the travel in the rear wheel is pretty limited. That being said, the ride quality is still pretty dang good. Where you're going to find that it falls short is if you're riding on really rough roads. And in Southern California, the freeways, there's a lot of sections where the road's really bad. So if you're doing 65, 70 miles an hour down the road and you start hitting bad potholes and bumps and things like that, you're going to start feeling it on this bike. The stock seat isn't the most comfort driven seat out there either. It's again more of a cosmetic type of a seat. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not really geared towards functionality of being more comfortable. As far as passengers go, you can definitely put a passenger on this bike. You will need to get a pillion and passenger pegs for it. There is no passenger pegs on this bike stock from the factory. If you load a passenger up there and you start getting up on the highway and doing, you know, distances on the freeways, you're going to need a really smooth freeway for this to be, you know, a decent ride. If you start hitting rough stuff in urban metro areas, the passenger's going to have kind of a rough ride. And you know, I'm just speaking, you know, for a Harley, where I feel like people's expectations for comfort is a lot higher than most types and brands of motorcycles out there. I mean, just speaking in terms of all motorcycles out there, this thing is a lot more comfortable than most. But in speaking of terms of just Harley-Davidsons and cruiser motorcycles, this thing is a little bit limited and has a stiffer ride than a lot of the other cruisers out there. You're definitely going to have a better ride quality and things like that up on the freeway than like a Sportster. Also, you have a 6-speed transmission in this bike. That 6th gear guy is vital when you're doing freeway speeds like 65 miles an hour plus. You know, you can just be putting this engine along no problem, 65, 70 miles an hour, real effortless. And you know, you're just cruising 2,500 to 3,000 RPM and doing, you know, 65, 70 miles an hour, no problem. Whereas on like a Sportster, you're whining that thing out of 5th gear, and you know, it just feels like you're white knuckling a little bit more and less of an easy ride to it on a Sportster. That and the chassis and the weight of the chassis and the suspension is a lot more conducive to, you know, heavier loads like 2 people at higher speeds as well. But like I said, if you're a guy that does a lot of freeway riding, a lot of distance riding, then a touring chassis bike is going to be a lot more comfortable than something like this. Now, if you compare this to like a Heritage, you know, a Heritage has the standard height Softail shocks. It also has a more comfortable seat on it, and so, you know, those 2 items mostly make it a more comfortable ride than a Slim. And that, on top of that, you've got a windshield as well, which up on the highway, really people don't realize this until you actually get out on the road and ride with and without a windshield. A windshield makes a big difference, guys, and if you're on a long trip, the windshield can really reduce the fatigue factor by a lot. You know, not to mention, you know, little rocks and bugs and things like that that hit you in the face. So, you know, this is a bike that's geared more towards, you know, your local around town stuff. But, you know, there are plenty of accessories for this bike, like windshield, more comfortable 2-up seats. Harley has a seat called a Sundowner seat for this bike that makes it a lot more comfortable for 2 people. So there are definitely options out there. You can get bags for this thing if you want. Kind of a small FYI piece of information, Harley-Davidson came out with a bike called a Black Line in, I want to say, 2011. And the Black Line kind of introduced the tail section that you see on this bike. It's kind of a slim tail section in the back, hence the name, right? And the Black Line ran for 2 years, 2011 and 2012, I believe, and then they discontinued the Black Line in 2013 and just kept the Slim. But a lot of the fitment items and accessories that we saw on the Black Line, like your backrests, your seats, things like that that fit the rear tail section of a Black Line, will fit on the Slim. So the Slim, with the exception of the Black Line, has a unique tail end that isn't shared with any of the other Softails. So people usually ask me in the comments, they usually say, hey, if I'm X height and X weight with X amount of experience, is this bike good for me? And so I'll try to kind of give you guys some parameters that will help you figure out if this would be a good fit for you guys. So the bike, like I said, has a really, really low seat height. Now, everybody's inseam is a little bit different, regardless of what their height is. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say if you're about 5'4", 5'5", that would be about what the minimum height for this bike would be, which is pretty short to ride, you know, a big cruiser like this. There's very few makes out there. A lot of Harley-Davidson competitors don't have a bike anywhere near this low of a seat height for something that gives this quality of a ride. So for, you know, ride quality to seat height, you know, ratio, if there is such a thing, this bike does really, really well. Because, you know, as a general rule of thumb, you know, the lower the bike is and the less travel you have in the suspension, the stiffer the bike's and the stiffer the ride's going to be, right? So that's why, you know, dirt bikes have really tall, big, long suspension. So now as far as like skill level, this bike's actually really, really easy to ride. There's very little like electronics and frills and stuff. It seems like nowadays, you know, a lot of motorcycle manufacturers, it's all about the latest anti-skid control and 3 different running modes: sport mode, cruising mode, off-road mode, and windshields that go up and down electronically, and tire pressure monitoring systems, which are available on some Harleys, and you know, all kinds of electronics in the dash, GPS, all this stuff. This bike has none of that stuff. So this is just your real basic, rudimentary, raw core Harley-Davidson. So if you're looking for futuristic technology and stuff, as far as, you know, gadgetry and stuff, this bike doesn't have any of that stuff. This thing's old school. But what it does have, and Harley's better than anybody at this, is they've incorporated modern mechanical technology into the bike and hidden it so that it still retains the classic look, but you still have things like, you know, fuel injection. And, you know, I'm sure people are going to comment and say, oh wow, fuel injection, big deal, you know, welcome to the 1990s or whatever. You know, I get it, it's not new, but it is, you know, technology that makes this bike run a lot better than Harley-Davidson's in the past. So you got fuel injection, things like available ABS. The ABS does work very, very well on this bike if you want to get it. And basically what ABS is the anti-lock braking system. So if you were to hit snow, ice, water, gravel, something of that nature, it makes it so the wheels don't skid. So they're gonna pulsate and slip just like in a car, and so it helps you retain traction on the road so you don't slide out. You know, other things that it has is like all the wiring and you know, the harnesses, the wiring for the lighting, the dash, the braking system. It's all hidden very, very good in a Harley-Davidson, and especially in this bike. So it doesn't take away from the classic style and lines. Another thing that Harley-Davidson does really, really well is its paint. The paint on this thing is exceptional, and that's no different than any other Harley. Yeah, the paint looks really, really good. Also, like the seams and welding, or the lack thereof, is really good on a Harley-Davidson. And so if you just like the beauty of simple lines in a motorcycle, this bike and Harley-Davidson does that better than anybody out there. So this was kind of a crazy situation. I was sitting here idling at a light, and my rear GoPro camera is stuck on the rear fender with a suction cup, and it just fell off all of a sudden. And the guy next to me started honking his horn and pointed down at the ground and told me my camera fell off. So there are still good people in this world, guys. He could have easily just taken that and had himself a $300 GoPro camera. So yeah, it leads me to my next point. If you're gonna stick suction cups to this bike, the denim paint doesn't allow for the best suction on this thing. So there you go. So the cons of this bike, or the people that I wouldn't recommend this bike to, you know, if you're 6'1" or above, you know, you're probably going to want to maybe think twice about getting a taller bike with the taller suspension on it, and maybe even thinking about getting a touring bike. You know, maybe you don't do long distance riding, maybe you don't want the big bags and the big fairing on your motorcycle, and I totally get that. Maybe you just want a real clean classic cruiser bike, so this would be okay for you. But you know, if you're a guy that, maybe you're a younger guy, maybe you're an experienced rider, you know, it seems like I get a lot of guys that are like motocross riders, or not professionally, but just guys that maybe like grew up riding dirt bikes, or guys that grew up riding sport bikes that want to get into the Harley world now, that still maybe want some performance out of their vehicle. A Softail and a Slim probably wouldn't be the best choice for you. A guy like that, I would recommend a Dyna too. There's just more suspension oriented mods that can be done on a Dyna than on a Softail. The lean angle is a lot better on a Dyna, and it can be improved on a Dyna as well. Yes, you can improve the lean angle on these a little bit. You can change the floorboards out to pegs. I don't see very many people doing that. I think it kills the overall look of the bike a little bit if you do that as well. But if you're somebody that really wants to crank on these things, take them through the twisties real fast, and you're going to ride them real aggressively, probably not the best choice, a Softail Slim. The guys that buy Softails, in my opinion, are the guys that are really looking for a really distinctive look, which this bike delivers in spades. But and someone that just wants something that real calm and classic and just like a cruiser type bike, with emphasis on the word cruiser. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about who it's not for, and things you should be aware of when you're trying to make your decision as to whether you want this bike or not. As far as beginners, it's a bike that can be used as a beginner bike. I wouldn't recommend it because when you use the word beginner, I think of someone that has never ridden a motorcycle before, and this bike is still very expensive if it gets dropped. I think that along with the mechanicalness that is conducive to a new rider, also the price tag is something that I think sometimes people don't talk about, and the price tag on this bike is definitely not a entry-level beginner price tag. Now, if you're someone with a ton of money and you just want to get into this, can you learn to ride on this bike? Yeah, it's a low seat height, real low center of gravity, real easy to ride. You feel like you're down in the bike as opposed to up on top of the bike, so you really feel like you're one with the bike on this thing. So yeah, it's you can definitely ride on it and learn to ride on it, I should say. But as a beginner, and if you're just learning how to ride, chances are you're probably going to drop the bike once or twice, and some mistakes like that get really expensive on a bike like this. So I wouldn't classify this as a beginner bike. But if you're a guy that has the basic grasp of riding a motorcycle, maybe you're just not the most experienced rider, then this bike potentially could be a very good choice for you. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I try real hard to get back to everybody and answer any questions that you may have. And if you're looking for a Slim or any other Harley-Davidson in the Southern California area, you know where to find me. Thanks, guys.